You saw your picture really for the first time.
It is true, yes.
Could you tell us why?
Well, because the completion of the montage of the film was accomplished by the studio, not by myself. And they didn't invite me to a preview, I don't know why, a moment of panic or excitement. And it just happens that I've never seen it till tonight.
Did you like it very much?
I don't know.
Was it the same picture you intended to make of us?
No, because of changes that they've made and so on.
In 1958, Orson Welles wrote, directed and starred in Touch of Evil. Released in 1958 and recut 40 years later by editor Walter Murch. Based on the memo left behind by Welles himself, which outlined his original desires for the movie once he was fired from the post-production process and was unhappy with the theatrical release of his movie.
Yeah, Vargas can't hurt me.
Maybe not.
In this essay film, I will analyse some of the editing and narrative choices made by Welles as we compare the studio cut and the Welles cut of Touch of Evil. Without doubt, the opening shot is the most famous shot of the entire movie. It is one long crane shot that follows a car that has a bomb placed in the trunk. Here are the different versions of the long take. Welles, in his memo, said, "As the camera rose through the streets of the Mexican border town, the plan was to feature a succession of different and contrasting Latin American musical numbers, the effect of our passing one cabaret orchestra after another." This method of sound and filmmaking was meant to immerse the audience within the film's world. In the book How to Read a Film by James Monaco, he states, "It is the persuasiveness of sound that is its most attractive quality. It acts to realise both space and time. A shot comes alive when a soundtrack is added."
You folks are American citizens?
However, in the theatrical cut, the contrasting Latin American musical numbers are cut out and replaced with an original musical score, as well as having the opening one shot having the credits appear over it. This is problematic because the audience's attention is now diverted away from the events taking place in the shot, as they may focus on the credits or the theme music instead. This eliminates any feeling of major suspense or jeopardy for the characters in frame. Orson intended this scene to be suspenseful, as the editor Walter Murch said.
Welles didn't want this. He wanted no titles at the beginning. If we know a bomb is in the trunk of the car and we know this is a title sequence, we know the bomb is not going to explode until the title sequence is over.
Later in the movie, there's a scene when Vargas, one of the characters, walks into a blind woman's shop to make a call to his wife.
Excuse me, madam, could I use your telephone, please?
Right in front of you.
Do you have a phone book?
I'm blind, mister. You'll have to ask for information.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In the original studio cut, when Vargas is on the phone, it is framed so that the blind woman sitting near Vargas is out of frame. However, in the Welles cut, the blind woman is framed. Welles intended for this blind woman to be some sort of distraction, a tool to inhibit Vargas's conversation to his wife.
Oh, Mike, is that why you called? To tell me somebody's been arrested?
I note with distress that the shot of Vargas at the telephone has been blown up in such a way as to eliminate the blind woman in the foreground. She was not there by accident. Her presence embarrasses Vargas.
Susie? Of course you are.
The shot is framed so that the blind woman takes up a large portion of the foreground, looking more prominent than Vargas.
Well then, I'll be calling you back later. Goodbye for now.
The blocking of the actors here is important. The audience is able to feel what Vargas is feeling in this moment, as he feels put off that the woman is so close. As an audience, the woman invades our space, taking up a lot of the frame, albeit not being an important character.
Of course you are. Well then, I'll be calling you back later.
In the studio cut, we are relieved of this sort of anxiety. The blind woman and the smart blocking of the actors is removed, thus making it easier for the viewers to lose interest, as the tension is also withdrawn.
Goodbye for now.
Mike?
In the third act of the film, Wells's character, Quinlan, sits down in a room with the character, Marlene. Quinlan is drunk and suspects something, hence why he stumbles out the room. What is interesting about this scene is the placement of the shot where Marlene looks up. The scene which just played was the studio cut, where it's edited so Quinlan and Marlene share a look at each other. Wells in his memo wrote, "Secondly, there's a close-up of Marlene glancing up, which is needed for the moment when I stumble out of the room."
But what Wells wanted was to delay that look and have her look up only after he left the room. She hears the squeak of a chair, looks up, and it's too late.
I'll get him out. Away from that music. Be sure he doesn't see you.
Relating again to How to Read a Film by James Monaco, he talks about the denotative and connotative meanings in film. The denotative meaning being it is what it is, and we don't have to strive to recognise it. In relation to this scene, we simply think that Marlene has noticed Quinlan's exit. The connotative meaning, however, conveys how ideas are constructed based on a viewer's own experiences. With Marlene's late glance, a viewer may think that Marlene wanted to say something to Quinlan, but it was too late.
Another drink. You had enough.
A connotative meaning thus reinforces the movie's climax. Where we can only wonder here what Marlene is thinking.
His famous intuition was right after all. He framed that Mexican kid Sanchez, but he didn't even need to. The kid confessed about that bomb.
Hopefully, you can now see that Touch of Evil is a great example of how the simplest of ideas can have a dramatic effect on the subtext and the narrative of a movie. I hope this has given you further insight into Welles and his theoretical and psychological approach to cinema.
I've no idea. It's never been explained. Because they loved the rushes. Every day, the head of the studio came to me and wanted me to come to the office and sign a deal for several pictures, and it's great stuff. Then they saw a rough cut of it, and they were so horrified that they wouldn't let me in the studio. And nobody's ever explained what horrified them.